really glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. We will start here with our agenda. This is the third in a series of 6 webinars focusing on modernization, both in open systems and in mainframe environments. We're going to do some introductions and some housekeeping as usual. Because this is the third, I will give you a shortened few slides on company information. And then we're going to talk about different areas where you can modernize your application. I'll finish up with some screenshots of some customers of ours that have very kindly lent us their modernization screens. And then we'll do some questions and answers, hopefully answers. Before we begin, I want to make sure that everybody can hear me. I know I got a lot of answers from my polls, but not everyone did. Could you raise your hand if you can hear me? The hand is over on the right-hand side. And while you're doing that, don't forget to get the handouts. There are 4 of them there. I have put a copy of these slides in. And how are we doing on the hands? Yeah, looks like we got everybody raising their hands. Thank you. The handouts we have, I talk a lot about some stuff that I want to give you links to. So I just put it in a document. One of the links there, of course, is our YouTube channel. Please go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Trying to get enough subscribers so that we can have our name on the YouTube channel rather than just a number. I have the success story in there for the next speaker next week. And again, the slides and the data sheet. And then when this webinar is over, you're going to get, as you did on the first one if you went to it, and the second if you went to it, a copy of our link to the recording. So let's see who's here on our side. This is me, Marilyn Prince. I'm a solutions architect here at Veryant. I was previously with AccuCorp. I was also a COBOL programmer. Handling your questions and problems that might come up during the webinar are Daniel Cardenas. He's our Business Development Director for Latin America. He's been with previously with AccuCorp and Micro Focus, and he has also been a mainframe and open systems COBOL programmer. And Bernard Zizerman, our Enterprise Business Development Director. You may know him as the creator of Telebig, which is a legacy modernization company. So I'll review Veryant a little bit. Veryant is COBOL. We were founded in 2005, and by 2014, we had over 1 million users worldwide. Our main offices are in the US and Italy with direct distributors all over the world, including the United Kingdom, and we have a new one in South Korea. The isCOBOL compiler compiles your COBOL to Java classes. Does this transparently. All development, compiling, debugging, and running happens in a familiar environment. It's still COBOL as far as the COBOL developer is concerned. Veryant takes care of the Java seamlessly and invisibly. Our goal is to see all COBOL applications move to a useful, expandable, powerful environment, and to make that move as easy and pain-free as we can, with constant efforts for compatibility with other COBOL dialects. We want you to keep the strengths of COBOL, the mature business logic, and integrate it with the strengths of Java, modern, modular, flexible, etc. Then we want to give you a simple and complete way to take that combined application and put it on the environment best suited to your business, be it the cloud, the mainframe, or a distributed system. We think this is the best way to get the most value from your IT investments, to keep the good, add whatever is needed to make it better, and end up with a vital, cost-effective solution. Let's review the Veryant products. Our software development kit includes the COBOL compiler, which compiles the COBOL code and creates that Java class that I was talking about, a full-service graphical debugger, and an IDE based on the familiar Eclipse environment, a full complement of utilities and tools, as well as a SQL engine to handle your ESQL. For deployment, we have a runtime framework, which is a set of Java jar files that are needed by the Java runtime to run the compiled classes, a set of servers, including an application server to run in a client-server distributed environment. This uses multi-threading processing, and it keeps your files stable. and it gives you a very high level of performance. And for a large number of users, we have a load balancer to balance processing over several servers. For web and mobile, we have the EIS. It's a group of products for web enablement. WebDirect 2 or WD2 maps COBOL UI to JavaScript UI. Web services, SOAP and REST, we're going to cover next week in detail. And web client, which runs on your desktop application from a browser without changing your code. I talked about this a lot in the first webinar. You can view the recording if you want to know more, or come to the next webinar and see a demonstration of a real application using COBOL servlets. Also, we are the only COBOL that provides a standard solution for Android mobile devices. I'm going to talk a lot more about data storage in a bit, but isCOBOL includes several data storage options, both ISAM and RDBMS. The database bridge, also called EasyDB, generates a bridge program to convert your COBOL standard file I/O statements to SQL statements, so you can access any relational database that you want without changing your code. isCOBOL UDBC is a JDBC ODBC solution, and it gives relational database access to your COBOL data files. And again, the product that Veryant has that isn't on the list is our excellent technical support department. We have decades of experience and a structure that gives us the ability to give every customer personalized service. These are the areas that I'm going to be talking about today where you can modernize your process, your application. The first one is your development environment. Modernizing this gives you the ability to develop better practices for continuous integration and continuous delivery. That's that CI/CD that you may have been hearing about recently. You can deploy your application in a different way. We'll talk about that. Update your data for faster or expanded access or easier interoperability with other applications. And we'll talk about improving your interface and user experience. So first, development. This may surprise you. When you think about modernizing your application, you don't usually first think of your development environment. But the more options, but if you update your IDE and your development environment, you're giving your developers more options to modernize your application. And you also create an environment that appeals to newer, younger developers coming from these cutting-edge backgrounds. The popular agile methodology, the CI/CD that I talked about earlier, and the interdepartment teams of DevOps, these all mean that you need to increase your software development lifecycle speed and make it clear and well documented at the same time. The plugins for Eclipse, which are found on the Eclipse marketplace, can help make isCOBOL's Eclipse-based IDE the tool that you need to do all that. Now, some of these extensions can be considered crucial, such as code versioning. Using Subversion or GitHub lets you share your projects among multiple PCs without worrying about, for instance, conflicts. And the isCOBOL IDE makes it easy to link your code to these version control systems. Another useful tool is a software build system, such as Ant or Maven. This will standardize your project build and improve your development practices. Another area is continuous delivery, and we use Jenkins, but Jenkins and Spinnaker are two examples of the CI/CD tools, meaning it enables continuous integration with your version control system, testing and analysis tools, and continuous delivery to a development or a staging or a quality assurance environment. And finally, be sure that the COBOL vendor that you use is actively improving and moving in the right direction to help you keep your applications fresh and up to date. This is one of Veryant's main focuses. Now we'll talk about data. Let's take a moment to see. I want to see where your data is stored right now. Would everyone put into the chat, just tell me something about your data. What format is it stored in, and how do you access it? Is it a relational database? Is it ISAM? Just throw it into the chat, and let's see where everybody's storing. I think probably quite a few people are going to be storing it in ISAM. Okay. All right. So at Veryant, I want to tell you why you're doing that. At Veryant, we use mostly Subversion for our version control. We do have some testing programs on GitHub. We use Jenkins, and we use Ant, and we use Mantis and Eclipse, of course. And all of this is integrated into our Eclipse environment. All right, looks like, wow, we've got people with so many options here. Let me take a look. All right, it looks like, wow, we have some ISAM, as I expected, some DB, some Visio, VFC. All right, so still using those the vision files. Okay, good. All right. Okay, so the default data storage method for most COBOL is in index sequential access method format, or ISAM. isCOBOL has 3 file formats built into its runtime. The first is JISAM, which is this portable, compact ISAM file system. It includes data encryption, for instance. It's still a great way to store your files. Even if you stay with JISAM, you can change or add to the functionality with a custom file handler. It's sort of like a hook program for your data access. You can see examples of this in the sample data access file redirect folder of the isCOBOL installation. There's some great samples, and there's 3 of them, as a matter of fact. For heavy hitters, which means a heavy file access situation, we also include C-tree-RTG from Faircom in our runtime. This is the same database-like format used by Verizon and UPS, for instance, many others. Though your data is still in ISAM format under the covers, C-tree adds a server layer that provides added file security. It gives you faster performance for those files that have high access, and it gives you transaction processing. It is included at no cost in the runtime. However, there is an extension that you can purchase called C-tree-RTG Enterprise, and that gives you more database features, for instance, SQL access to your data, expanded transaction processing, and real-time replication. The other format that is enabled in our runtime is DB Maker. Now, this is a true SQL relational database. DB Maker is an easy-to-use, low-cost, feature-rich SQL database management system. It is built around and has tight integration with an advanced database engine, and it's lightning fast. If you're interested in DB Maker, you should talk to us. I think it's probably, at this point, I think it's underused. Okay, if you want to store data in a relational database like Oracle or MS SQL, but you don't want to change your COBOL programs, you can do that. You can use our database bridge to generate a bridge program that converts your standard COBOL file I/O statements to SQL statements. If you prefer a no-cost solution and have embedded SQL code in your programs, the isCOBOL compiler includes a SQL engine precompiler that will translate your ESQL correctly to access your relational database data. And finally, if you're interested in NoSQL, give us a call. We can help you use object-oriented programming to access a NoSQL database. Let's talk about the way you deploy now. Fat Client with the runtime, programs, and data on the user's desktop is the simplest, and it's great for one user. But outside of testing, it's pretty uncommon to see this type of deployment. A distributed client server is a mix of thin and fat clients. Some or all of the pieces of the application, the runtime, the programs, and the data, are on the server, but most of the processing still happens on the client side. with access usually through a map drive or a tool like Citrix. This is an easy environment to set up, but it's unwieldy. It can be hard to update any part of the application's environment, and it's really not good for file stability. If you're using it now, you know what I mean about file stability. Thin client is our suggested implementation, and it's included in the runtime at no extra cost. This method uses the server not only as a host for the application pieces, it also does all of the processing. You put the programs and the data on that server or several servers, and the thin client limits the network traffic to the screen and the keystroke inputs and outputs. That's all it does. And it takes care of that security, file stability, and the speed of deployment. Now, this means that a small set of files needs to be installed on each client, but once you do it, the automatic thin client updates minimizes the effort of keeping up with newer versions of isCOBOL. The application server's administrators panel lets you see who's connected and who has what file locked. And there's a how-to video on our Veryant YouTube channel for more information. That's why I've given you the links handout. There's also a checklist of considerations if you're moving from fat client to thin client. This is in our user's guide. There's some programming guides in there. And again, that link is in the links in the handouts. The web client is a new environment. Sometimes you can't or don't want to install the thin client pieces on the client side to give access to your application. So you use the web client. It's a connection from any browser to a central server that acts as a client to the application server. These servers, by the way, can be the same. You don't have to have two servers for it. A bridge from the browser to the thin client is a good way to think of it. Again, there's a video showing you how to set this up on our YouTube channel. All right, so let's talk about those of you that have a character application. You might be thinking of modernizing by introducing some graphical user interfaces in. And we have a set of programs. I showed them in a little bit of them in the first webinar, that take you through different steps of moving to graphical. So there's 5 examples here. This one is the character. This is the first stage. We've replaced each screen section item with a graphical control, and we've manually changed the display to graphical. And I say screen section, you don't have to have a screen section, but instead of saying display this at this location, you're saying display a label at this location, like that. And this next one, we've got more detail in the screen section for a little bit more control. We've changed the font. We have some color additions. But this is the character screen completely rewritten. We created a screen section in the IDE and copied that screen section copybook. We added a toolbar and a status bar, some bitmaps, and a better exception handling. And this is that same screen with some code changes that were made outside of the code in the configuration file. Now, there's a UI modernization section in the documentation's programming guides. Look in the links again. And it steps you through each one of these. Okay. So if you already have graphical, a GUI interface, and you want to improve the user's experience, we've made that easy. Veryant, every version, we are looking at what is standard in the industry and making changes to allow you to keep up with the industry as easily as possible. And the easiest way is this code insertion that I've been talking about. Instead of going into your code and adding these new properties that we're coming up with, you can add them through the properties file. And this was added in 2020 R1, which has been out for a while. Now, other changes that we made in 2020 R1, we made every grid searchable with the standard, the Control F for find. If you had a grid on your screen, and if you compile it with the 2020 R1, you automatically have this grid search. You don't have to change your code. You can also change your columns to be filterable by adding the filterable column style. I've circled the filter on this little screenshot here. Now, since 2016 R2, you can copy the grid content to the clipboard or export it to Excel by adding the heading menu pop-up property to grids. And I mentioned it, and I know it's 4 years old, but you may have avoided doing it because you would have had to change your programs. But with code insertion, now you can do it. And these are just a few of the grid changes. I mentioned the grid first because we've done so much to the grid lately. Because there've been a lot of changes in the grid in the industry. So the best way to see it, I think, is to run the isControl set sample in our sample directory. In the first webinar, I showed a screen with entry fields, and then I used code injection to change the look of these entry fields. The code changes change the outline of the entry fields from a 3D box, which is kind of a 90s look, to a simple underline. And it changed the color of the field when it had focus or the mouse moved over it. This is the current standard look, which you can see in the screenshots from Microsoft that I have here with its simple underline entry field, and the one from Oracle. It's hard to tell, but the focus where under work phone is a white background rather than a gray background. It's just a little bit lighter tone. The modernization sample installed with the 2020 R1 isCOBOL, both in the SDK and the IDE, have a great example of the things that you can do with code injection. They have the code injection compiler.properties that you want to look at. A ribbon is a toolbar. It's so common it was easy to find an example of it. This one here is from PowerPoint. It's been around for a while, but it definitely will give your graphical screen an updated look. The tree view control has been around a long time, and I remember when I was at AccuCorp and they added the shortcuts. Remember that? So that it would say find, and then you could add Control F with I think it was a /T or something. I was so excited. But tree views have come a long way since then, and Veryant's kept up. It's common now to see columns of data in the tree view items. And this is what the table property does. Table view property. This is new in 2020 R1. The screenshot that I have here is Firefox's what they call a tree table as an example. The LM Zoom Layout Manager is, I think, probably the culmination of all the layout managers. It's wonderful. It's a one-line configuration variable in your properties file. It applies a layout manager to each control and font in the screen so that when the screen size changes, the aspect ratio of everything on it is kept, and the screen still functions as it's supposed to. And this is really necessary when your screen could be on a laptop, a desktop, a tablet, a phone, which, of course, the tablet and phone would be web clients. Gradient color is a way to make your windows pop. Look at this swatch screen here. How boring would that be if the background were all one color? Gradient color can guide the eye and spice up a bland screen. And with code injection, you can add it with just a couple lines to your properties file. Again, look at the modernization code injection sample. Hotkey programs can be anything, but are usually associated with help files. Adding control-specific help in a pop-up message is a user-friendly way to update your screen and improve your user experience. The sample that uses help IDs is isSamples. Look at the new features section. This was a new feature in 2019 R2, and it's called the mouse over hook. And the look and feel, LAF we call it, look and feel. The default follows the host system setting, but you can change that. It's a command in your, it's a run command line option. Now I want to show you the difference in those. This is my default, LAF, look and feel. This is metal. All I did was add -- metal to my runtime command line. This is motif. This is called GTK, which happens to be the same as my default. And this is Nimbus. I like Nimbus. It kind of shines. It gives it that chrome look. Okay, so let's look at some customer screens. Let's see what other people have done. This is a great example of a before and after screen from our Brazil distributors, Interon. I like this splash of color on the left-hand border. There's a lot of screen, but they've assigned the yellow color to the field that has focus. See that down here in the bottom? It's easier for the user to see where they are. Not only did they update their screens, but they put important information together on one screen where it used to be on multiple screens. And that really does increase the user's experience. That's what the users are used to seeing right now. This is another example from Brazil. It's a company called Cotripal. They've been a Veryant customer since 2015. The company has over 1,000 users, 7,800 COBOL programs. They have 7.2 million lines of code, and get this, they have a 4.2 terabytes main database. They use isCOBOL's IDE to write their supermarket software. It was previously written in a mishmash of languages like Delphi and isCOBOL. Since then, they've moved their GUI application to the web using isCOBOL's WD2. Remember I talked about WebDirect 2, and that maps the COBOL GUI to JavaScript GUI. And then they moved even further into the web world by writing their own JavaScript and moving some of their COBOL programs to the background as REST services. Daniel, are you there? I love this screen, but I've noticed that the screens from Brazil, they're very bright. And, you know, I'm here in San Diego. We're very close to Mexico. And one of the things I love about Mexico is that they embrace color. When I go down there and I look and everything's colorful and wonderful, and then I come back here to San Diego, and boy, do we love our beige. So anyways, the COBOL, the applications running at their stores run on graphical Linux operating systems, and they use a mixture of JI, SAM, and DB Maker data. Remember, DB Maker is one of the 3 formats available natively in our runtime. This is a sample of their PVD screen. It's the point of sale screens, so they have to be bright and uncluttered. They are written with the isCOBOL control set in the IDE and implemented with WD2. This is the order screens on the online grocery ordering application. Again, written in isCOBOL IDE and running with WD2. And to me, this looks like a good web page to enter data into. Once they get to the store, they can pick up their online order in a drive-through. Here are some of the screens for that, and it's also developed with the IDE and run with WD2. So that's all COBOL. But to expand their online grocery ordering application, Cotripal created a portal, and it uses this new capability of isCOBOL to use JavaScript on the front end and move the COBOL to the back end as a REST service. Now here's some of their JavaScript screens. These are not written in COBOL, and you can kind of see the difference. They've taken full advantage of the type of controls that a website like this would use. These screens are more of a data output tool than a data gathering tool. Lots of color, lots of charts. Now, Cotripal's mix of technologies with isCOBOL as an underpinning means that they're using the COBOL where it works best, either in the background running business logic or on screens with heavy data entry and manipulation. And they're taking advantage of other languages where they work best, organizing simple information, eye-catching shapes, and graphs. This is another one. We'll take a different look, different view here. This is the shop module of iModulus. These are the older screens. Now, this is one of our Netherlands customers, and this was their oldest module, and they knew it would benefit from a rewrite, design and code-wise. It dates from the 80s. It was originally written in RM COBOL and then migrated to Micro Focus and then Acu and finally the isCOBOL. all in the same character mode. Now, most of the programs could be moved with just a few changes, but the rental registration set of programs was the most used in the module, and it was the toughest to convert to GUI. And I thought I would share some of their efforts, because I know that a lot of you are thinking this is going to be a difficult job. Not necessarily, but the code of this shop program was old. A lot of people had worked on it during the years. Nothing was documented, and it didn't use a screen section. And it also had a bunch of features that they suspected weren't being used, and they were correct. So they had to redesign and rewrite this in many places. It involved talking with the users to see which functionality they actually used, as well as working their way through 40 years of messy code in 20 programs. And still, it was done in 6 months by one developer who also did his normal maintenance and support work. The new screens are designed to run on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS without looking any different on each platform. So they kept the screen simple. And I don't know if you noticed, but they used the Nimbus look and feel. They kept the function and enter keys the same because they wanted to minimize the disruption in the user's experience. And the last company is a company in Italy. It's called Apogee, and they asked us to work on some of their screens to see if A, their Acu screens would look the same running in isCOBOL, and B, if they could be modernized without doing any major coding effort. And of course, we said yes to both. First, we compiled the programs and ran them as is in isCOBOL. And this is their splash screen and their menu screen. And then we modified some controls just using that external code injection variables, not touching the code itself. And you can see the original menu and then the improved menu with the code insertion. And then we created a menu screen by combining the menu splash screen and the short screen with the push buttons. We added a grid on the left side and a flat style accordion control that reads from LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. on the right. Now they had work screens. We gave them a quick update with code injection, adding alternate row coloring, the ability to change the order of the columns, the search in the grid, the filter in the grid in each column, and LM zoom to keep the controls ratio to the window the same when the screen is resized. And we even gave their right-click hints an update using a border and mouse over hook program to give them more control over the format of the hints, as well as when, where, and how long they display. And so that's it. I hope that you've gotten some ideas and you're revved up and raring to go for modernizing your applications. Remember, with the web client, I didn't mention this earlier, but with web client and of course the application server, you can mix character and graphical. So you don't need to do it all in one fell swoop, as we say, or swell swoop, as my dad says. It looks like some people have lost audio. I'm sorry about that, but I am here. Let's talk about our upcoming webinars. We have our webinars are happening in 2 different paths. The next one on open systems is next week, and I'm going to be joined by Matthew Burke from Collection Partner. He has some great stories to tell about his efforts to modernize. They had a sort of a stutter start and had to go back and do it again. But he now has a JavaScript front end with their COBOL in the background. And then the week after, July 1st, Bernard and Massimo are going to talk about isCOBOL for the ZOS. We have some exciting new things coming up for that. And then on July 8th, isCOBOL for the technologist, for the expert. Massimo Bertoli, our CTO, is going to talk about some advanced features, some APIs, etc. So I hope that you join us for some or all of those. Don't forget the webinars for the past webinars, the recordings will always be available. And I think it's time to take some questions. Daniel and Bernard?
Yeah, okay. I don't know. Oh, Daniel, you can
Yes,
go.
I have here a question. Is in regards the embedded SQL. Can I use my ProCobol precompiler? And basically,
Okay.
the answer is yes.
The answer is yes, but you don't need to. But you certainly can.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. All right.
Can
Any
I
other?
include and maintain Java? Hold on. I'm sorry. Can I include and maintain Java programs to the standard IDE deployed with this isCOBOL?
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
because it's Eclipse based, you can have your Java and your COBOL together, either in our IDE, or you can, if you're already using Eclipse IDE, you can get our plugin to add to your current environment so that you can add your COBOL to it.
Bernard speaking. I just see some new question. Do
Mm-hmm.
we have a code analyzer feature for isCOBOL in the IDE?
Yes. In 2020 R1, we have a new feature called, if I can get the name right, code
coverage.
Yes, and what it will tell you is, when you run it with the code coverage, looking at your run, it'll tell you what parts of the code actually get executed. Because if you put your testing, if you're testing and you're actually not getting to part of your code, that's not good. So this will tell you how much of your code you're actually testing, and it also includes, our 2020 R1 also includes unit testing. So you can put statements into your COBOL code that are activated when you pass the switch, and it will tell you if the value that you think you're supposed to get at this particular point is correct.
I see another question. Does Database Bridge affect performance?
It is an extra step, so it does affect performance, except that most people don't notice it. It's not a significant difference. And of course, it can be minimized with different settings. So if you try the Database Bridge and you're seeing some problems with that, contact us, because we can tweak some things on there.
If I can add that ECDB or Database Bridge already has the SQL code ready to be executed, while other tools have to generate in that moment the code and then execute it. These are difference of performance.
Right. A lot of our, and that's true for a couple of other things. Because we have this in between stage, the step where it's COBOL to Java and then Java to Java class, we can insert code into the Java step. So the class that you are distributing already has that embedded SQL in it. It doesn't have to be generated every time. And I think that's the key that makes our Database Bridge faster than the other solutions that you might find out there.
I see another, which is, I'm not sure we can answer all in detail. What about runtime code checker like SonarQube or SonarInt?
We have not tried either one of those, but
well, I would say that well, in my previous company, Telebig, we have been connecting SonarQube to isCOBOL, but just for code analysis. And the question apparently talk about runtime code. So, well, we probably come back with more detail to the person who has a question, and we thank you for his question.
Yeah, Vijay, I'll give you a call and talk to you about it later.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And
Daniel,
do you see any more? I think we. Well, we are just on time, I think.
Yes, you're right. Okay. Again, don't forget to get the handouts. I'll send you a link to the recording, and I hope to see you next week. I think next week is going to extend the modernization ideal. So thank you for attending, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.